All right, y'all, let's have some fun with this here. So the Washington Post did this opinion piece that I wanted to share with you. And the title is The 10 Worst Things President Biden Did in 2023. Now, look, I could write this article. I could write an article with a headline like this and actually lay out, like, no, here actually are the 10 worst things. But Washington Post, who's viewed as some sort of, like, official moral authority, serious, serious paper, serious news outlet, they wrote this article, and as you're about to see, they whiff quite a bit. So let's dive into it here. All right, the number 10 thing. He made the child care crisis worse. As my Post colleague Alyssa Rosenberg and I pointed out in September, child care costs have been rising at nearly twice the rate of inflation. We proposed expanding the State Department's au pair program, making this lower cost option available to more families. Instead, the Biden administration put forward a plan that would double the cost of hiring an au pair by tying compensation to state and local laws on minimum wage, which will effectively put the program out of reach for many working families. Okay. On this one, I'll give it to him. Fine. I mean, I don't know if it's in the top 10 worst things he did, but I do remember Matt Brunig writing articles about how this childcare thing would actually like raise childcare prices for a certain number of people. I don't know if I agree with this person's specific solution here, but I'll give it to him. Okay, fair. I got no problem with this one. That actually is a problem if your childcare solution is potentially even making it worse in many situations. He made us more dependent on Russian uranium. This is number 9. If Biden wants to speed up Americans' transition from fossil fuels to electricity, we need more nuclear power. Yet the president restricted development on more than 1 million acres of land that includes the only U.S. source of high-grade uranium. Or, since the United States is the largest purchaser of Russian-enriched uranium, the move increases our dependence on Russia at a time when we are trying to isolate Vladimir Putin. I think this one's kind of silly. Yeah, Russia is launching an illegal and offensive war against Ukraine, and that's a bad thing. But to say that as a direct result of that, you can't do any sort of pragmatic, practical business relations that might be absolutely necessary for, U.S. goals, I find that ridiculous. I find that, like, this guy is almost wishing for more fertile ground to get in World War III. He'd rather us have no communication at all with Russia, no trade at all with Russia. That's kind of dumb and dangerous, by the way. Number 8, he circumvented the Supreme Court on student loan forgiveness. Oh boy. With the stroke of a pen, Biden tried in 2022 to cancel $500 billion in student debt, only to see his unconstitutional plan blocked by the Supreme Court. So the president used other regulatory means to write off nearly $132 billion in student debt. Anyway, effectively forcing blue-collar workers to subsidize the higher education of white-collar professionals and launching a frontal assault on Congress's power of the purse. Oh my God, that's the dumbest thing I've ever read in my life. So to everybody who makes the argument, bro, this is actually a plan that like hurts the working class. No, there's been multiple analyses on this that looked at the numbers. And the fact of the matter is the plan overwhelmingly helps the working class. This trope of like, you're going to make a truck driver pay for the gender studies degree of this pink-haired freak, bro. That's not true. That's not true. When you actually look at the numbers, this overwhelmingly helps working class people. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is, look at how they loaded the terminology by saying unconstitutional. But it's not, the whole point is it's not unconstitutional. He tried it to have a COVID justification the first time to cancel it. The Supreme Court said no. By the way, they shouldn't have. They should have allowed it. But even if I grant you that, they went on to use the Higher Education Act. Well, the Higher Education Act, there's no denying that the Secretary of Education has a right to do whatever they want with the loans held by the U.S., with the debt held by the U.S. And the federal government holds like 90% of student loan debt. They could wipe all that out if they want to. Now, he didn't, but he could. And so the fact that he circumvented the Supreme Court, no, he's just using a more direct law in order to reduce some of the student debt. Now, by the way, he's actually narrowed the scope of how much they're going to reduce. That's the problem with what Biden did on this. The problem isn't that he reduced some student loan debt and he did it through executive order. The problem is that he didn't eliminate all of it through executive order. So now you get the sense of who this guy really is. Okay, he put that in top 10 worst things Biden did. Arguably one of the best things Biden did. He goes, no, this is one of the 10 worst things he did. All right, let's continue. Oh my God. Number 7, he failed to police anti-Semitism on the left. Right now, as I talk to you, Joe Biden is arming and funding the mass slaughter of innocent civilians in Gaza. He is arming and funding a genocide and providing cover for Israel and buying them time by doing his fake little virtue signal finger wag of like, Israel, you need to bomb more humanitarianly. You need to bomb more nicely and specifically. As they say that, top Israeli officials have said on Israeli TV, oh, we actually feel no pressure from Biden. We know that he's just trying to buy us more time. We know he's just trying to cover his ass domestically. We know that we have a total green light to do whatever we want. And what is Israel doing? Oh, they're doing whatever they want. They have a literal plan to ethnically cleanse Gaza that they've been bragging about, that Netanyahu keeps talking about. Plus 972 magazine came out with an article saying they're using AI to purposefully target civilians and civilian infrastructure. And they're effectively doing terror bombing to create a, quote, shock in society. So at the same time that Joe Biden is arming and funding a literal genocide in Gaza, this idiot comes out and he doesn't say, hey, the biggest problem is you're arming and funding a genocide. He says it's that you're not policing anti-Semitism on the left. When people say from the river to the sea, you must go out there and condemn it. When people say free Palestine, you must go out there and condemn it. When people say intifada, you must go out there and condemn it. Unbelievable. What a joke this guy is. What a sick clown. So he doesn't have in the top 10 mistakes of Biden, I don't know, arming and funding a genocidal maniac like Netanyahu as he ethnically cleanses Gaza. He has in there, you should be more angry at the meanie lefty anti-Semites who are critical of Israel. Well, that's just the reality, isn't it? That this actually isn't anti-Semitism. This is criticism of Israel, a nation state carrying out horrible policies of extermination. Jesus Christ. Number 6, Biden allowed a Chinese spy balloon to violate U.S. airspace. This is the Washington Post. This is like if your dumbass apolitical uncle who thinks he's a genius and does the weird centrist tap dance of like, bro, I think both sides have problems, bro. It's like if that guy wrote an article. By the way, there was reporting not that long ago that it wasn't even a Chinese spy balloon. Remember that? There was reporting that came out recently which said that. He allowed Iran to attack U.S. forces with impunity. Oh my God. That's number 5. So in other words, he's saying, why don't you stand up to Iran? Why don't you bomb them directly? So one of Biden's biggest mistakes, according to this guy, is that we didn't launch a new hot war against Iran. Think about how insanely stupid this man is. This is the political class. This is conventional wisdom, what you're looking at right here. His problem is that he didn't do an all-out war with Iran. At least not yet. That may come soon. We'll find out. What a psycho. 4, he allowed the worst border crisis in the U.S. history to get even worse. Yeah. Joe Biden continued a lot of Trump's policies. He's very hawkish on the border. And more and more people keep coming, and guys like this just want him to be even more like Trump. No due process. Ship them all out. No questions asked. Who cares, about human rights? Who cares about, your day in court or due process? I mean, this is what this guy wants. He wouldn't say it, but that's what he wants. He's blaming Biden for the border. I mean, this is one of those things where it's like the right works everybody up into a frenzy, and then the centrist goons at the Washington Post go right along with the right-wing narrative. Number 3, he blocked allies from giving Ukraine a clear path to NATO membership. Yeah, because, we'd be much better off right now if Ukraine was in NATO, because then we'd also be in World War III with Russia. It would have triggered us to get directly involved with U.S. soldiers and U.S. boots on the ground if Ukraine was in Russia. If Ukraine was in NATO and Russia invaded Ukraine. And he's like, yeah, that's the biggest problem. So in other words, this guy, in his top 10 list of mistakes of Joe Biden, he puts, you didn't do a hot war with Iran and you didn't do a hot war with Russia. Number 2, he continued to slow roll weapons to Ukraine. Look, I don't know about you guys, man, but I remember there was a long period there over the past 2 years where there'd be an article that comes out, like every week there's a new article that's like, and they're sending $23 billion more in weapons to Ukraine, and they're going to send another $12 billion more in weapons to Ukraine, and they're going to send another $47 billion in weapons to Ukraine. Like, we get those articles every day, and he's like, you didn't give enough! You didn't give enough! Oh my God. All right, and the final one. This one I actually agree with him on. He announced he is running for re-election. Yeah, that is one of his biggest mistakes. I'll give him 2 of 10 this guy got right. The rest of them are embarrassing, and yeah, he should. This guy should retire because he's a fucking idiot. He has no idea what he's talking about. And the Washington Post had an opportunity here to write a real piece. By the way, if you were actually going to make a list of his biggest mistakes, to not have in allowing the COVID era expansion of the social safety net to expire. To not put that in is journalistic malpractice. Because you saw a giant crash in his poll numbers as soon as the social safety net expansion went away. Not extending the child tax credit, which led to an increase in child poverty of 40%. To not add that in is journalistic malpractice. Like I said, arming and facilitating and aiding and abetting a genocide in Gaza. That's number one. That's number one. And then number two is probably letting the social safety net expansion sunset and not bringing it back. Those are the two biggest things, which has led to his downfall. And, of course, they're nowhere to be found. This guy would rather beg for war with Iran and Russia. You know, real brilliant, highfalutin, serious Washington Post journalist stuff here. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.